Okay, Houston, we've had a problem here.
This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
Houston, we've got a problem we have to figure out. And it's an answer to maybe one of the biggest questions that is asked like in the world. Really, yeah, like this question. Where did everything come from? I'll bet you've thought about that question. You've wondered, where did I come from? These are big questions that are asked throughout the history of the world. You know, from our perspective as people at Houston Christian, we believe that we came, from God, that God spoke us into existence. But now when we look at this from a scientific perspective, we want to just look at it from a more natural, questionable perspective. So scientists have come up with an idea. So let's just go like way back. They say that a long, long time ago, there was nothing. There's actually a term, sort of a biblical, it's a Greek or something term, it's called ex nihilo. Out of nothing, something came. And this is often referred to, of course, as the Big Bang. I'm not going to go into great detail right now in this segment about what the Big Bang is and how it works, but it starts with nothing and sort of an explosion. It's kind of more like an expansion. Again, we're not going to get into the details of it. And things began to expand, these particles, these little dust particles, and they expanded and created, and eventually they turned into galaxies. Now galaxies, as you can see in this picture, are amazing. They're clusters of hundreds of millions, literally, of stars. Now something you may not know, and make sure it's very important that you understand, that we live in a solar system with one star, which we call the Sun, and it's inside of one galaxy called the Milky Way galaxy, which is one of hundreds of millions of galaxies that we see in the universe. And so the galaxies, from the Big Bang, the galaxies form, right? This is the scientific explanation of how the world and the universe came to being. And then the galaxies formed, and particularly the Milky Way galaxy, our galaxy, formed. And out of that galaxy there were many different stars or suns that were created, that occurred. And then eventually that led to our solar system. Now, it's kind of confusing to ask the question, where did all that come from? Where did the solar system come from? How did this all happen? Well, it all comes down to a very simple idea. And that simple idea comes down to something that you've probably heard of called gravity. Now, most people's understanding of gravity is actually incorrect. You know what gravity is? It's actually technically a mathematical equation, and it's this. The force of gravity is equal to m1 times m2 over r squared. There's a g here, that's the universal gravitational constant, times the mass of object 1 times the mass of object 2 divided by the distance squared. And that gives you the force of gravity. Now here's the weird thing. This is the thing people don't get. Do you realize that if I've got two objects that have mass, let's say me and the Earth, then I'm attracted to the Earth. There's a force of attraction to me, that this is me, and this is the Earth. But the law of gravity doesn't say that I'm attracted to the Earth. It says that we are attracted to each other. I'm attracted to the Earth, and the Earth is attracted to me. It's weird. That means that if I drop this marker onto the floor, it's attracted to the Earth. It falls, right? But here's the weird, crazy thing. The Earth is attracted to the pen, so it's gonna move up to meet them together. You'll say, Mr. Bergmann, that's crazy, because I've never seen the Earth come up to meet the marker. Well, it has to do with the relative masses. If the mass of object 1, the pen or the marker, is really, really small, the mass of object 2 is really, really big, the Earth, then the relative movement will be very, very, very minor for the Earth. The Earth is monstrous, right? Compared to the marker's weight. So this gravity is the key player. Why am I talking about this in terms of where did everything come from? It's because what's going on when the sun was formed and all this stuff is there's a bunch of tiny dust particles. It's actually called a nebula. This is called, by the way, the nebular theory. that out of a cloud of dust, and here's a nebula that they've looked at like through the Hubble telescope, and there's a new star, as you can see, forming. And there's a bunch of tiny little dust particles that are forming, and because they're attracted to each other, over time those dust particles glom on, become bigger. And more dust particles, and more dust particles. And as they get closer together, they often get hot. And if they get enough of them together and they get hot enough, then you make a sun, which is super hot. It's a star, like, giving out crazy amounts of energy. And so a fancy term this is called accretion. C-R-E-T, I think that's how you spell it. Accretion. All these particles come together. And then they come together to make a sun. They come together to make, well, the Earth. And eventually you get how this all works. Now, a couple of interesting pictures I want to share with you. So here's the image right here. The birth of our solar system. It began as dust particles, right? And they're in kind of a circular orbit. It goes from a sphere to a disk. And there's rotation involved as they get moving. And then eventually some particles in certain bands become close enough together and they make, well, a planet. So that's, if you will, from a scientific explanation, where did everything come from? Now, there's still ultimately the question at the beginning, where did the stuff to accrete and use gravity and get all together come from? We don't know. Maybe we do. Maybe there is a designer behind the design of our universe. See you in class.